Welcome back, Be Better Tribe. This is your host, Julian Alvarez. This podcast is designed to explore stories, lessons, and leadership journeys that shape who we become. Before I get in to introduce the guests, I want a reminder, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this podcast with those who you think might benefit from these stories, as well as visit our website, bebettertribe.com. You can find the most updated gear, as well as the habit tracker that I've created to help individuals like yourself create those habits to get that 1% better every day. The reason I bring that up is Conor touches on that at the end of this podcast about how habit tracking and about having a goal in mind can really help you throughout your walk of life and throughout your chapters and how you can focus on trying to improve. And so I really wanted to welcome in Conor Begley. He is a Cal Poly alumni like myself. Our wives actually introduced us. They both went to Cal Poly as well. But what really stood out for me is his journey from going into co-founding a company, selling that company, and then starting a Fathers Brewing as well as a new software company. So Conor has been an entrepreneur throughout his last, 18 years. He's been able to not only build a company, he's built multiple different companies. And so the lessons and stories that we're going to unpack during this conversation are going to include the sacrifices that he made, the decisions, how he had to refocus on certain things, and just really the learnings that he's been able to overcome, the learnings that have instilled in him over the past 18 to 20 years that have carried him through a lot of what he's done. And so I'm excited to talk about Cal Poly and what we've done in our past, but really about what he's learned along the way. So I'm really excited. I'm motivated. I'm inspired by Conor and what he's accomplished so far. And I'm excited to learn more. So hope you enjoy the conversation. Let's go ahead and welcome in Conor.
Right here.
All right, Be Better Tribe. We got Conor Begley here, who is my number one Lions fan that I know. He's a good friend. He's a founder. He's an entrepreneur. He's somebody that we both shared the Cal Poly roots, but went in somewhat of a different path, which I'm inspired by. He kind of took on a challenge of owning his own company, co-founding it, and then now is owning a killer brand in the beer industry called Fathers Brewing. So, Conor, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the Be Better Tribe podcast.
Thanks, Julian. Yeah, it's been fun to watch you kill it too. Excited for this. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Well, what we like to do is just talk about our experiences, our lessons, our stories, our journeys. And what I'd love to start with is bringing you back to Cal Poly. So you and I were both there. We had similar experiences, obviously going to an amazing college, but it seemed like at that moment you approached building your own company, which is really exciting. So can you walk me through what that journey was like? What made you want to do it? And tell us those early stories of like being a co-founder earlier on.
Yeah. So I think, I didn't, I had a lot of fun at school. Let's put it that way. Right. Just like you did, I'm sure you got more done than I did, but it was about halfway through my senior year, the economy melted down. Right. So This was 2008. I was graduating in 2009 and I was like, I got to get my stuff together, or I'm not gonna get a job.
Yeah.
And so really started focusing in about halfway through, and then got like straight A's after that, and just I don't know. Like I remember having this senior project where you're like competing against other teams and just smashed them, right? And I was like, oh, like this is kind of cool because it was like very business focused. This is kind of fun. And so then graduated, started, it's funny, the first job I started at, I was making $15 an hour. It was like I had a choice between, I had a job that was going to pay me like $70K a year and then this like, quote unquote internship. And the internship started first, but it was $15 an hour, no medical benefits. This was pre-Obamacare, so I had no medical care. And I could have started this other one, but I was like, no, like I think this company's going to blow up. It was a startup, right? Software startup. And so I joined as employee number 32, and then we got up to about 300 over the next 2 years, which is really cool. And went from like an intern to I was like the first account manager of the team. And then, kind of trained an account management team underneath me, then became an AE, and then I was the number one AE, and then, started training the team and leading the team, at like 23 years old. Right.
Yeah,
and so it was cool. And again, I think that's the advantage of being in these really fast, high growth startup cultures is like,
Mhm.
when the company doubles, right, you need twice as many managers, right? And so they would rather hire from within or promote from within than hire from the outside, right? So as a young person, if you're really kind of cranking, you can get opportunities much earlier in your career than you would have otherwise. And so got kind of sucked up into that. And then after that, went to Australia with my girlfriend, and that says about 2.5 years. Went to Australia with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, Marissa, who our wives are friends from
Yeah.
Cal Poly. And then when I came back, was thinking about starting a company. Had a call. It was actually with Marissa's dad, who is like a longtime CFO in the space. He's sold like a couple $1 billion worth of companies as CFO in the software space and consumer spaces. And I was like, "Hey, Steve, like, what do you think about this idea?" And he's like, "I really like the idea. More importantly, I like the team because I think good software teams are built on strong sales, which I had, strong software development which my co-founder had. He was a math grad out of Cal Poly, and he was he was a guy named John Namneth. He was the lead software architect for a company called Marin Software, which was just about to go IPO, and he was like their second engineer, like 11th employee, and so he got to see that journey too. And so it was like, and he's like, and I think I can bring senior leadership, which will be valuable. Like those are the three things he thought we needed. So he put in a check for 25K. My dad put in one for 20 unexpectedly. John's grandparents put in 25. And then a coworker he had put in like another 20. And that was like enough to get us going. It was like 90K or something. And so that was a start. It took us like a few years to really like get moving. And it was, it's gnarly, right? Like we were paying ourselves 2K a month pre-tax, so 1,600 post-tax, and my rent was 1,300. My car payment was like 250. So I had like $50 to $100 left over a month, right? It was like nothing.
Dang.
And so, yeah, but then, hit our stride and, started cranking. So we went from like 45K our first year, 225 our second year. And then our third year was like our breakout year. We did 1.5 million in ARR. And then went from 1.5 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 tracking to 12. And then, and I'm giving you, do you want me to keep going the full
Yeah.
journey?
No, I think the story is extremely valuable.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So,
Yeah.
so we were at 6 tracking to 12, and then, we lost access to Instagram's data. So, Instagram, we were in the social media influencer marketing space, and obviously Instagram's pretty important in that space. And so
Probably number, like, what do you call it? Like
it's
close.
number one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number one for
Yeah, it's
sure at
like
that
number
time.
one, and then YouTube and TikTok are like 2 and 3, kind of close in that range. So those are the big three, right? And so you lose access to that, and it's like, oh shit. And we had like almost everybody on month to month contracts, and so saw a bunch of churn, like and so and then and we had like 20 new grads. 90% of our team came out of Harvard, Stanford, or Berkeley, right? And we had another crew of like 15 to 20 people that were coming out, graduating that year, and we had to rescind all those offers. We had like fire, you know, 15, 20% of the team, in addition to rescinding all those offers, which like you gave these kids offers in like
Dude, yeah.
March. And then in April, I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry. Like, I don't have it for you. I felt so fucked up. I feel sorry,
Yeah.
pardon. I just felt so bad.
No,
And
yeah.
so, anyways, but I think that period was probably the period where we had our most important learning. So what happened was, as these customers started churning, I woke up at like 2 a.m. I'm like, I feel like there's a pattern here. And like, so I just really looked at every single one of those. And what I found was, how big, because we're in the social media space, right? How big their social audience was highly predictive of churn, right?
Mm.
So if you had over 50,000 followers on Instagram, we had about a 90% chance of keeping you over the course of 2 years, right? And if you had under 50,000 followers on Instagram, we had about a 90% chance of losing you within 2 years, right?
Got it.
And it was linearly correlated, right? Meaning the bigger I get, the higher our retention. And so it was like, the problem was that was like 40% of our revenue, right? So it's
Mm.
like, oh shit, like half our revenue is trash. And so what we did was, buckled down, stopped selling. So like, churned all those contracts, only signed new people that were above that threshold. And it took about 2 years of like flat growth.
Yeah.
And then, but after that, but our mix was changing, right? So we were kind of we were shifting from one customer type to the other. And coming out of that, we just exploded. So our like the highest net retention in the industry. We had really high gross retention. Our gross margin got way better. Growth went through the roof. And then we sold for 70 million in 2021 on just $4 million raised. So it was a pretty good exit.
Pretty
And
good exit.
so,
That's fucking legendary, dude.
yeah,
That's
it's cool.
awesome, and I love the idea of, like, so what I got from the whole story is, like, there was a time in college, and I was
Yep.
with you, where you just have to figure it out, and you're like,
Yep.
"Fuck." I almost failed out of, Cal Poly my first semester because I was like I transferred from UCSC after freshman year. I was
Yeah.
on, like, pass, no pass at UCSC to now graded to, like, "Oh, shit, I need to show up to class, I need to do my job, like, I need to do this, or else I'm gonna lose my scholarship," and it seemed like at every point, like, in college, there has to be a moment that you have to take it serious because
Yep.
otherwise you're just lost. And then I also love the idea of, like, you had a network that you tapped into. You had the courage to talk to Marissa's dad to say, "Fuck, you've done this before.
Yep.
How can I leverage that?" And I love what you said. You need good sales,
Yep.
you need good software engineering, you need good talent, and then senior leadership who can help you, like, navigate it, which is really cool. And then the tipping point where you really you focused on what was gonna make your business grow. You can't just grow at all costs. You have to be very intentional because that churn probably cost you millions of dollars wasted because you didn't focus on if you focus still there on, like, just the bottom line of growing, those 2 years maybe would have been wasted. Who knows, right? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well,
That's a really
the kind of sneaky part about it is you have a variety of problems that occur when you're like signing the wrong people, right? So
totally.
part of it is you waste money, right? They churn at a really high rate. Part of it is like your team's not really happy because you get a bunch of unhappy customers, right? So nobody
Mhm.
likes to sell something they don't think works.
Totally.
And so when you like have 40% of your customer base is like not a good fit, it's just like you just never should have signed them in the first place. That means like half the people your CS team is dealing with are like unhappy, right? Like but they just never should have been signed in the first place. And
Totally.
then the third kind of really hidden cost is, they send bad signals for what your product team should build, right? So, you can imagine if I've got Nike and Sephora and, Too Faced Cosmetics and whatever, who all have millions of fans. They have very, very different problems
Mm.
than like some startup company that nobody talks about, right? And so, but when you're getting, product feedback from like, it could be like Arm& Hammer deodorant, right? Like Arm& Hammer deodorant doesn't have a big social audience because nobody talks about deodorant, right? And so when you're getting feedback from Arm& Hammer on like, here are all the things that are wrong with your product, and then you're focusing development resources on fixing those problems, that's wasted time, right?
Mhm.
And they're going to ask for shit that is totally irrelevant to Nike and Too Faced and Under Armour and these other big brands. And so you end up building a bunch of stuff that's not necessary, right? Or
Totally.
actually makes your product worse.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the most important business learning. And we've applied it in a bunch of different ways since then. So
Yeah, and the thing about it, Connor, is I love that advice because it can go in so many different ways. Whether you're an account executive, an SDR, an account manager, or a kid in college, if you're throwing out LinkedIn messages to people that aren't gonna actually like, if you're throwing it out to companies that you don't want to work at, or you're throwing it out to people with like no or limited connection with you, like you're not gonna get responses. And so it's all about like focusing and prioritizing what's gonna actually give you results, which I love that analogy. And so when we're thinking about you as a co-founder, you as an entrepreneur, you obviously went through so many life lessons. So when you're thinking back of like, what did you learn? What did you tap into? Some story or lessons that kind of continued to ring true for you, whether it was when you were an AE and account manager in Australia or running Tribe Dynamics. Like what are some of the key things that you learned along the way that can help anybody in any situation?
yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is like if I had two things, right? Two things that I would, that I think have shaped me, that I think are important. I think one is, you know, just like this sheer force of will on some of this stuff, right? Like there were so many periods where you're like, fuck it. I don't want to do this anymore, But I remember looking at John, my co-founder, and we were in some bar playing pool, and like the company was like, we hadn't quite hit that inflection point yet. We're working through it, and I was like, I was like, I don't give a shit. I was like, I'm going to drag this thing kicking and screaming into existence, whether it wants to
Mhm.
exist or not. And I've felt that way. Like we've got this beer brand now, and it's like the same thing. It's like never in my mind have I thought about it not working, right? Like it's
Totally.
going to work. It's a matter of how, right? I got to figure out how, like I got to navigate the maze, but like there will be an end to the maze, right? I will get there. And so I think that, like, I think there, and I think both that and when you commit to something like this, like you have to assume that it's going to take 10 plus years, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and that should be a really important filter for what you decide to work on, right? Like, should I work on this or not? It's like, well, is this something I want to do for the next decade? Right? If the answer is no, then don't do it, right?
Pivot.
And like do something else until you find something that's actually want to do.
Yeah.
And I think the second piece is this idea of like focus, right? And it's pretty hard for me because, I've got a million ideas a day. I've got a lot going on. I'm sure I'm like ADD or some other undiagnosed version of that.
I tell Nikki all the time, I'm undiagnosed ADHD for
For
sure.
sure, right? And
Yeah.
so, it's like I always got a lot going on. And so, I think with both my co-founders, right, with John, my co-founder on the software side, he used to always talk about it as like focus on the important, not the urgent, right? So like
Mhm.
try to identify not what's at the top of my inbox, but like what's actually going to move the needle, right? Like what's actually going to impact, what's the most important thing I need to do. And then, because it's easy to get caught up in the urgent, particularly for me, like what's burning
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And then Joe, my co-founder, does it similarly, where it's like, and it wasn't like an intentional, or he's trying to like teach a lesson or anything, but he's like, what's the most important thing we have to do today? Like, just start there. What's the one, like, and do that thing first, right? And if you do that, it kind of compounds over time, right? Because it's easy to be like, this is really important. And usually important things are hard. And so you're like, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do it the next day. I'll do it, and you just keep kicking it down the road. But if you start each day to be like, okay, what's the most important thing I have to do now? Okay, let's do that, get it done, and then do everything else, right? And so, so focus, and then this, idea of kind of commitment, like, and
Yeah.
force of will, I think are the two most important things.
Because after coming back from Australia, having like $50 of disposable income is fucking tough, dude. Like, I,
Yeah.
like looking back, we've been doing this for 20 years and you've had obviously your success in selling a company and whatnot, but like there was a grinding moment where you had to sacrifice a lot to get to where you were. And people forget about that journey, which is why I think it's inspiring to talk to individuals like you, because it's important for people to know it's not easy. You have to sacrifice. And like you said, it takes 10 plus years to actually have it come to fruition, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like,
I mean, it took us a decade, 9.5 years to sell my first company. To your point, I mean, we lived on 2K a month for like 3.5 years, so it was a lot of
in San
like,
Francisco, in San Francisco, like that is
I lived
not,
in a closet. Like I
yeah,
lived in a literally like the I had a California king bed that was like my mom's hand me down,
yeah,
and it filled up the entire room. So to close the room, I had to lift the mattress up and close it because I had about a foot on each side. And like, but that was what you did. And I think, and it's easier to do it when you're young for sure.
totally.
And I also don't think like, obviously the whole like founder journey gets mythologized, but like, you can do the same thing, at another company. Right? I've heard of people go, one, like I'm just going to crank and just be like the number one salesperson in the company, and you make a ton of money that way. Uh, or like one of the things I've seen people do, which is pretty unique. I've seen a lot of people like started a company, like, hey, keep my salary really low. I want a lot of equity.
Mhm.
Give me as much equity as you'll allow, right? And I'm going to take a low salary. I'm just going to crank, right? And so I think there's ways to do it that aren't just founding a company, but yeah, it's tough, dude. But it compounds. And I'm sure you saw it where
Yeah,
it's like, oh, wow, you're like 29 and you've done all this stuff. Like as soon as you get ahead of the wave, right? As soon as you're like, oh, wow, you're already here. You're already a director. You're already whatever. It starts
yep,
to snowball, right?
totally. Mhm.
And then people are like, oh, like this guy must be really good. Like, or this girl must be really good. She's achieved so much so early, right?
Yeah,
So
I love that, and I think it's like the grind is the commitment. It's whether it's you're living in a closet or you're living under your means, you're taking that risk on equity. I think it really shows the courage, but again, it's like you have to work. You whether you're a founder or you're a SDR joining a company, like if you're the best at your role, if you work your ass off, you can get to where you want to go. But you got to be disciplined, which I love. And so, like, man, serial entrepreneur, co-founding another company. You got Fathers Brewing in the works. You got the hat on. I love it. Great piece here, man. What made you want to do it? I know it's a, you got kids now, obviously. And so like, it's a grind, but it seems like you're enjoying yourself. So tell me a little bit more about Fathers and what made you want to do that.
Yeah. So, I got to see a lot of our clients were in the beauty industry. And so I got to watch this whole like clean beauty movement,
Hmm.
which was, people didn't know what were in the products. Right. And so, and when you did test it, there's all kinds of nasty stuff. And so I like beer and I look at beer. I'm like, I don't know what's in this. And I just
Have
saw
you
the
ever had
same.
it? Connor, I never thought about it once. Like, and I love beer too. It's like, I would never think about it.
Totally. I mean, again, the only reason I thought about it was because I literally had to speak on panels about like clean beauty. And so I was like, this is weird. Like, why is this not have it? And it's the
Mm.
only thing in the grocery store. And you can imagine like, a bag of chips, right? But you didn't have to say what was in the chips. It's like they probably put all kinds of weird stuff in there, right? There's a reason they have ingredients lists. Like, I'd expect the same thing to happen here just because there's no transparency. And so we tested all the beers and, it's gnarly, right? Like, 3 out of the top 5 beers in the country would be illegal to sell if they were drinking water, right? And so it's like shocking.
Oh,
Yeah. And so, there's all kinds of problems: lead, arsenic, Roundup, plastics, PFAs, whatever. And so like, okay, so we know that there's a real problem. Because that was, we don't want to call out individual brands, right? But we know it's a problem. So how can we, fix it, right? How can we make something that's, you can feel great about drinking? And so, it felt like an important thing. And I think that, and in some ways that's like part of the name, right? Fathers. It's like, what's the job of a dad, right? The
mm.
job of a dad is to look after the next generation, right? That's your job.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome, dude. I never
right.
knew that. That's a killer story right there. I love that.
Right. And so if we can push this category forward, like if we can have success and show that this is important, not only will the people that drink our stuff, be better off, but you may add like thousands of years to people's lives or more, right? Tens of thousands of years if you can fix the category. And it's a category that I love, right? I want to fix it. I want it to exist. And it's not just beer, right? It's all alcohol. Like wines have the same problem and liquors and whatever. And so that was the rationale on why. And then I also think that I'm a big, you know, your company is your team, right? Is a reflection of your team. And so, for me, I got to work with, so Joe, who's my co-founder, one of my co-founders, but the main one was a co-founder of a brand called Youth to the People. There's a clean skincare brand. And he got that up to about 100 million in revenue and sold it to L'Oreal in 5 years or
Cool.
6 or 7 years. So like pretty fast. And so, he's just a rock star and I get along really well with him. And it was like, hey, let's do something together. And then we're able to put together just a stellar team. And so I think a lot of it is it's a combination of like being in a category you really care about. Cause again, like I have no problem talking about beer for the next decade. I would love to do that. Right.
Yeah.
I'm happy to work on it for 10 plus years. And then the right kind of team, right opportunity in terms of it being like, this is a big deal. This feels like a big deal. I've validated it's a big deal. So those were the criteria. But I actually have another, because I'm a psychopath. I have another, we're actually relaunching the software that we had before. We sold it. It's still running, but
Yep.
we thought there was an opportunity to recreate it,
Oh, cool.
all, LLM first. So we launched that in March stealth and it's already at like 250K in ARR, 250,000 ARR. And so, it's got another like 30 or 40 brands in trial. And so we got that going too.
Love that, man. So you got two things going that you're passionate about that you've done in the past that, again, like I love what you said, you bringing it back to 10 years of like you wanting to talk about this for the next 10 years sounds fun to you. It sounds like you're like, man, I get to talk beer. I get to like go to fun events. I get to do this. That's killer. And then obviously the other one seems like it's like you get to reinvent that software in the new world, which is cool. So being part of two more questions and then we'll let you go is one is like as a second
Yeah.
time for both of these different brands, what are you going to make sure you do as you learn from your experiences the first time? You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes? And I know inevitably mistakes will happen, but
Yeah.
what is some of those things that you're
Man,
going
what
to
would be
focus
the
on
same mistakes?
this
I mean,
time?
I think the retention thing I think a lot about, right? Like making sure that I'm really monitoring like what is a good customer for us, right? And how do we know it's going to be a good customer for us? And so an example would be with the beer brand. It's like I realized that, you know, that I was like, how do I figure out, like, they're gonna, because like I could sell to anybody, right? But how do I know they're gonna come back and buy again, right? How do I'm gonna have strong retention? And one of the things I realized was I'm calling it the vegetable rule. Like if they don't sell vegetables, we shouldn't sell to them. So like if there's like a little liquor store that has no vegetables in it, and it can literally be like a tiny little produce area, like that's all it's got to be. Like that's kind of the filtering criteria. And so, but like restaurants, right? Those work really well. We do have some bars that do well that don't sell vegetables, but it's like pretty few and far between. So it's kind of funny. But I'm trying to, so I think that's one thing I really don't like. That was a pretty scarring experience, like having to go through that. And so trying to very early on, because you don't know, but trying to very early on figure out like, who is my customer? How do I make sure I identify them? Whatever. I think that's probably the first thing. What else would I not want to screw up? I think that in our first company, I was young and I was kind of scarred by an early experience, right? So at my first software company, I came in, went from intern to like, leading the sales team, right? I was number one in sales by like a wide margin. I was like doubling everybody else. And this is a big sales team. It's like 30 plus people. And then, but I was young, right? And they brought in somebody from the outside to like be the official like director or whatever, right? And it was kind of like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you choose me? To the point that literally on Salesforce, you have like little icons, and like 2/3 of the team changed their icon to, I don't remember why. It was like Lone Wolf No Club. It was like, cause she had like this little team she was managing. And it was basically like their way of rebelling for me, which was like really weird. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and then they like literally the president came to me and was like, hey, you gotta like quell this rebellion. It's like, all right, guys, like I'm not, and so, so I was scarred by that. And they told me, they're like, you were just too young, right? You're young. And so I was like, screw that. Fuck that. Right. And so with my next company, with Tribe, we hired really young and really, really smart and driven. And so, like I said, not that a lot of schools are great. We did end up having some people from Cal Poly, but like, 90% of the team was like Harvard, Stanford, or Berkeley, right? And so, and that was just because I was like, we're going to be a very math heavy company. What are the top 5 math schools in the country? Let's go
Why
recruit
not?
from those schools, right?
Yeah.
And it snowballs because if like a third of your company is Berkeley, it's easier to get the next Berkeley grad, right? So it's work together. And so, anyways, along that journey, I got convinced that that was the wrong approach oddly enough, by the people that we had hired from those schools. They're like, no, we need to get, people with more experience, right? We need to get, people that are more senior or whatever, kind of thing. And I was like, I don't know, man. I kind of like there's a lot of companies that have this culture of like, you bring people in straight out of school, you develop them, and then you promote from within as much as you can, right? Like, I'm just a huge fan of that culture versus like, hey, I know you're young, so I'm going to hire a manager above you, right? Like, I'd much rather like hire young, develop, and then have them grow. That's just my personal preference. And so we kind of got out of that. And I just think it was a huge mistake, right? And so it doesn't mean that you don't hire senior people. We have a ton of senior people at Fathers, and a ton of senior people at Kin, the new software company. But like we kind of abandoned that, like, let's hire out of school and build them up muscle. And so I'm not going to make that same mistake again.
I think you get a lot of driven, hardworking individuals that see things differently and they see problems and they solve them in unique ways rather than senior leadership. But if you can have the senior leadership that can tap into those resources, I feel like that balancing is great. But again, you knew it worked, so why change it? I love that thought.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
last question for you, Connor. We always like to end where if there's someone trying to enter the workforce right now, someone going through a transition, or someone just having a tough time, what's like one book, one quote, one thing that you would, give to them in terms of like some advice for those individuals?
Interesting. So someone going through a transition or like going through a hard
Yeah.
time.
I mean, dude, you and I, like we both graduated '09. That was a tough transition and
Yeah.
there's not very many jobs. So it was tough for people to land jobs. So similar to now, like AI is changing a lot of things. So what advice would
Hmm.
you give individuals who are trying to crack in or somebody trying to shift careers?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is good advice, but the the method I always took was like, I'm just going to outwork everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And so it's honestly like the simplest solution. Like anytime, I'm like struggling or I'm like, Well, I shouldn't say this. So I actually have a really good one. So I think hard work is definitely part of it, right? But that's pretty like everybody knows that, right? You work harder, you're going to do better. For me, the thing that's really worked well for me, I've got, I don't know, 100 of these, right? And what those are, they're like goal books. And so I found these early on when I was just trying to kind of like navigate shit.
Yeah.
And basically what it is you like pick 4 goals. So you go through this whole process. Like, what are the 4 most important things to my life? And I usually have 2 personal and 2 work, generally. It's kind of how I do it. And then you write every single day, like every weekday. You don't do it on the weekends. But
Yeah.
Monday
Yeah.
through Friday, you have these 4 things and you write out like what you did that day towards that thing. Right.
Oh,
And so it's just, and it can be a little bit, right? It could be 1, 2, 3, 4 things, whatever it
yeah.
is, but you're just writing down like, okay, these are the 4 most important things I'm working on right now. What am I doing towards these 4 things? And you just find that if you actually do that, it's this whole focus idea. It just compounds very, very
Totally.
quickly. Right. And so I think that idea of like, pick out what's most important to you and then, make sure that you do something every day towards whatever that is. I think that's a super effective way to do it.
I love it. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Cause you can just get lost in the sauce, right? It's just like too many different things you can do. It's like get lost. It's like take the time, think about it. And yeah, that'd be my piece of advice.
I think, and people often forget that. And you started with like, you got to work your ass off. That's a fact. Like, if you want to be the best, you have to work hard. And people shy away from saying it. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It had like a negative connotation to it, but like, man, you got to grind if you want to be successful. And the second thing is putting your focus in like the habits that you have. It seems like with you, have you ever read Atomic Habits?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 It's great.
To me, like, I mean, said you've been doing this for a long time, but it's like you're tapping into like a reminder every day to think about the goals that you're trying to achieve, which is only going to help you stay focused on what you're trying to do, which is fantastic. So I
Yeah.
love it.
It's really good. Again, I mean, I've had each one of these is like 3 months long and I've got probably 100 of them. Right.
I love
So
it.
it was really impactful for me.
I love it. Cool. Well, hey, Connor, I appreciate the time you spent with me today. And obviously your story is inspiring. Best of luck with the 2 new companies you got going on right now. You said it's Fathers and the other one, I don't know if you want to share it.
It's called Kin.
Kin.
So yeah, it's still in stealth, but we've got, if you're a brand with more than 50,000 followers on Instagram, hit us
There
up.
you are. I don't know if that's going to be the individuals here, but who knows? All right. Well, thanks so much for your time, Connor. I appreciate all the life lessons and best of luck with everything.
Awesome. Thanks, Julian.
Yeah,
Appreciate
take
it.
care.